I think most people in our audience, when they think of you, we remember fantastic moments, but with a slightly different repertoire. Richard Strauss' Die Frau ohne Schatten was an immense success when we did that a couple of years ago. And you and I had the pleasure of doing Tchaikovsky's wonderful Yushun Onegin together last year. Mozart is different, but I remember when we started talking about this project that you immediately were passionate about doing Così fan tutte. Why?
Why not? He's God. No. What can one say about Mozart that hasn't been said before, that hasn't been felt before by everyone who loves music and myself? I grew up with Mozart. All these years, I'm conducting symphonic music of Mozart and concertos. The operas less so, and the question is why? Well, because I was doing other things.
I think also sometimes when you think of Mozart's operas, you think maybe, oh, they are kind of the lighter part of the season. But when you program an opera season, actually Mozart is what you have to come back to keep the orchestra healthy, to make everybody aware of the musical quality. Is that what
it is? It is. Every musician knows that the music of classical period, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, Bach, of course, this is what we call our bread and butter, because it is there that a genuine musicianship is revealed, because the notes are few, but each one is so clear, has to be so clear, so obvious, has to know its right place, will never be hidden by the others. And therefore, in a way, one is naked. So if the performance is unconvincing, it's immediately very apparent. So we have to all the time keep coming back, because these are the genetics of being a musician.
Mm. When we discussed the piece, we heard from Sarah before, now we heard the singers discuss it. It's interesting, isn't it, that in a way it's a very cynical piece that tests love and sees what happens, cynical certainly towards the girls at some stages. Mm. And yet when you listen to Mozart's music, of course, there's a great sincerity and a great honesty of emotion there. How do you balance the cynicism and the innocence?
I don't find any cynicism at all in this work of Mozart.
Even in Alfonso?
Even in Alfonso. It is not a cynicism. One can call it perhaps also a wisdom born from one's own experience, because in the end, aren't we considering other people's experience from the prism of our own? That's very tempting, and most of the time we succumb to the temptation. But I see absolutely nothing cynical in Mozart's music, certainly not in Così fan tutte, simply because one of the greatest extraordinary qualities of this creator is his ability to reveal human beings in great complexity without making a judgment, without being judgmental. And that is what, in fact, endears all of us to him, is this ability. So cynicism couldn't enter into it. For me, in fact, it is actually a very feminist opera, because one of the reasons that it was not accepted in its time, and in fact for quite a while later on, I mean, figures from Beethoven to Wagner absolutely could not stand this idea being presented, because I think humanity was not ready to contemplate the subject of woman finding her happiness and experiencing very complex emotions. With men, it's a given, but not so with a woman at the time. And so Mozart and Da Ponte touched upon a subject that was basically a taboo. And in that sense, I would call it a feminist opera.
A stupid question maybe, but do you have a favorite moment?
Yes, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me about the highlights. Who am I to talk about the highlights of Mozart? Every note is a highlight, because every note is connected to the note that came before and that will happen after. Therefore, you cannot take one without leaving the other ones out. It won't make any sense. There aren't any highlights, ladies and gentlemen. It all starts with the overture and it finishes with the final chord at the end. And everything that happens in between is equally great.
That's a good answer.